Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Can't hear you, bro.
Has that sound gone again?
I can't. Yeah, I can't lip read that well either. That's the problem.
Hassan, if you can hear us, can you fix what's happening with Abdurraheem
No, I still
again?
can't hear you.
The sound has gone.
Can't hear anything.
What I'm going to do,
rain
Abdurraheem,
outside.
okay. What I'm going to do, Abdurraheem, while he fixes that, I'm going to introduce the listeners and the viewers at this particular time while Hassan sorts out this glitch, inshallah. Welcome, viewers, this week to A Piece of Cake, the Abdurraheem Green and Abdul Haqq Baker broadcast and podcast, should I say. This week, we're going to be looking at the Dawah and comparing and contrasting the differences between the 90s and the noughties and where we are now. So I'm going to start again. Can you hear us now, Abdurraheem?
Yeah, I can hear you now. Yeah.
Right, so I'm going to go from the top again. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah.
And
this is Abdul Haqq Baker.
And that is Abdurraheem Green. And this is a piece of cake.
Yeah.
As I'd started introducing Abdurraheem, as Hassan was fixing the technicalities, the technical glitches, one of the things...
There's a very bad crackle, bro.
Yeah, I'm hearing that as well. And I'm wondering, is that from behind the background, Hassan?
It's when you talk. I think it's something to do with your system, because when you're talking, there's crackling going on.
I'm going to put it on mute a minute. How's that now? Yeah, I can hear it.
Yeah, it's definitely you. So if you don't say anything, it's when you talk. When you talk, it crackles. There's something in your system, something in your microphone, maybe something that's...
What we do, you carry on speaking to the audience then, just like you came out, and I'm going to come out and come back in.
Should we just start again, or we're live?
We're live.
All right, guys. Oh my gosh, sorry about
that. So I'll leave and come back in, and you carry on.
Oh
I'm coming back in.
Yeah, okay. Okay, so guys, we're going to be talking about, well, as Abdul Haqq has said, we're going to be talking about how Dawah was then, back in the days when me and Abdul Haqq used to do the circuits. We used to go around the universities. Mashallah, we used to deliver a very popular tag team talk. And it was quite nice because it was like, you know, me, the white middle class English revert, and Abdul Haqq, the, well, still middle class, but black middle class-ish.
Ish. How am I sounding now?
Black middle class-ish, yeah, revert from his rap to reality background. So we were going to talk about, bro, like how the Dawah is different. Like, what's the difference then and what's the difference now? Right?
That's right.
I think, obviously, the biggest difference probably of all is the existence of, like, the power of social media.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I can still hear that clicking a little bit, but let's see if we can live with it.
Yeah, it's still, we're gonna have to just get on with it, bro. It's still there, but yeah.
Hopefully Hassan can sort that out at some stage.
It's probably the spies down one end or the other listening in to you, bro. It must be you. Like, you're the troublemaker.
They're welcome. We've got nothing to hide.
All that Black Lives Matter stuff. Honestly, bro, what's next?
Very true. I've got nothing to hide, alhamdulillah.
What's next, bro? After Black Lives Matter? Seriously, stuff. Bro, I watched the most horrific video today, bro.
Really?
Anyway, I don't even want to go into it, but it was like of Arabs, like, you know, obviously Gulf Arabs beating up, you know, beating up their servants and black people, and that was horrific, bro. I just feel sick even. Anyway, bro, so let's go back to the social media, right?
Yes, yes.
So I mean, look, social media has totally changed the face of Dawah for me. And it's quite interesting because I didn't even set up my Facebook page. I mean, I actually make my living out of my Facebook page at the moment. That's how I make my living, right? And I didn't even set my Facebook page up. Not my official one. I mean, I actually set up my private Facebook page right back in the days when Facebook first started. So I've had it, you know, and I only set it up because I thought it might be useful for if my old friends wanted to track me, they could find me and I could give them Dawah. That's the only reason I did it, right? So it sat there dormant. I didn't use it much until we started our year, and one of the brothers said, okay, start a, you know, like an official page for Abdurraheem. And subhanallah, now it's on like 1.212 or to 1.2 million or something like that. And I mean, the impact of it is massive, right? For me personally, bro, it's changed everything about the way I give dawah. And like most of my stuff is online now, right? And that's the way I like it, because for me, it's more efficient. You spend a lot less energy and you can reach a lot more people. But I guess the question is it as effective? Do you impact people as much as you do when you actually go and talk to them face to face? What do you think, bro?
I think, well, mashallah, I'm pleased and Allahumma barak that you've got what you've got with that audience. I think that your voice has always needed to be out there, even wider than it was in the 90s, mashallah, tabarakallah. I haven't focused that much on the online presence. And it was others who kept saying to me, like you, I had a Facebook page from years and I never used it. And then individuals kept saying, brothers kept encouraging, Abdul Haqq, you need to be there. The work you've done needs to be seen. Even the website that I started, that was from encouragement for a few brothers saying, you need to have your own website. I was like, no. They said, you have to do it. Alhamdulillah, since I've done it, I can see the benefit of that. And I think from my perspective, the intention was, if I can leave material there or convey a message, because that's what we're being told to do. Convey the message. That's all we have to do, and it can stay there in the ethers for people to archive, look, and search. Then that's an even better vehicle. Social media is a better vehicle for that longevity, if you like. Now we have individuals, mashallah, because when we were traveling around, we've got people contacting us and saying we remember your lectures and everything. That's all well and good, and that's nice. But cassettes fade away, as you know. Okay, social media is there to stay. So I think. The question you're asking, is it more effective? I suppose that I'm out on that one as well. I think the actual engagement.
I reference a work that was done in, I think, in 1976 by a French professor, and I don't remember his name, and I don't remember the name of the book either. I think he was a sociologist, but a very important work, and I'm sure anyone who's done media studies will be able to reference it. But basically, the whole thesis that he put forward was that the effectiveness through which people absorb information is very much influenced by the format by which and through which it's presented to them, right? So the medium through which they receive information impacts very strongly on how they respond to that information. Yeah. So if we put it in a modern example, right? The least effective way of influencing people in any significant way would be with something like TikTok, right? Because TikTok is literally the bottom of the heap when it comes to anything serious. Yeah. It's just people, dancing around, right? Apparently they told me there's other stuff, but I used it for a week and then I couldn't bear it anymore. Right? And it was like, I thought this is just an endless, parade of rubbish. Yeah. It was like, can I not even? But my kids told me, no, you have to know how to follow the right people. And there's other stuff like, people who do recipes, and I suppose you could use it for dawah as well. But the problem is, because everything is like 30 seconds, it's very short. It's very, very compact.
Right.
The possibility of actually people taking it seriously is very low. And that will be the same for Twitter, right? Twitter, because the medium is based upon very, very short sentences, right? And very, very short messages, the ability to impact people really significantly is like very, very low. Like I used to joke that Twitter is for twits, although I am on Twitter, right? And then as you like get advance up, probably Facebook actually has become quite a complex and sophisticated media platform, because you can actually put really quite long posts there, as well as incorporating like images and video and stuff like that. And obviously then you move up to like a website which theoretically is more serious, but on the top of the pile of serious stuff is books, right? So like books are going to have, and then the types of books, So like if it's a novel, it's not going to have the same sort of impact as, say, you know, a more academic work. So anyway, this was his theory. I thought it was very, very interesting. And obviously you add to that TV and you add to that radio. I think radio is one of the more, like today, looked at as one of the more serious mediums of communication, right? So I think the problem is, from my perspective, obviously doing a lecture and people actually attending a lecture and being there physically, there is something in that physicality. There's something in that actual physical presence and going and listening to an actual lecture that I can't deny. You know, there's some definite, you know, plus points to that, and some influence that you'll get from that type of way of communication that you can't get through just having, you know, like a chat like we are now, for example. Yeah.
No, I think that's very, very, that research sounds really good. That's excellent. But one of the challenges we have today, as you know, is the attention span. Okay, yeah. Of many, much shorter. And what you said speaks to, I've got it here, as I said, I've got some of our activity reports from Al Ansar. For those who don't know about Al Ansar, Abdurraheem, first and foremost, I'm going to do this. That Al Ansar,
you get the plaque, bro. You get the plaque.
We founded, this was the plaque outside our building, and the research and everything that we used to do. Abdurraheem was
you remember the safe down there, bro?
Oh, brilliant.
It was like some scary stuff, bro.
It was, but we owned that building. We had our own Dawah center in that instance. And Abdurraheem, you went to what you're saying about engaging with the people, and I think that it is interpersonal skills that you develop on the go, or you actually have them latently. So on the 28th of February 99, you were in Ottawa Central Mosque, and you did a lecture to 200 people about the Sunnah in Islam. For those who think I'm making this up, there's Abdurraheem's activity report.
Oh, there's my actual activity report.
Now, usually the next talk would be a week, a month, whatever. But you did something quite intense, because the next day, on the 23rd, the same day actually, you did 200 on the 23rd. Later on that day, you spoke to another 300 in Ottawa Central audiences. That one was on major signs of the hour, and that was brilliant. I've got your notes on that. And then the following day, Abdurraheem, the numbers increased, and you had 400 people turn. You did some brief notes there, and that was on sex, drugs, and music. And I'm intrigued, because the title here was Shaitan's New Fish Hooks. And I never asked you what were these new fish hooks. Can you remember that?
It was just a retake on an old classic, The Tricks of Shaitan. I don't know, someone came up with the fish hooks. So it was the usual talk about Shaitan, you know, the enemy of humanity, how he tries to fool us. He takes us step by step, stage by stage, right? And then, you know, the story of subhanAllah, the monk, I can't remember his name now.
Juraj.
Anyway, the famous story of the monk of the Beni Israel,
Juraj,
is it?
Yeah, the monk called Juraj. Whose monastery was broken. It was demolished because of
no, that's a different one. So that's a different one, right? The one is the story about anyway, it'll come to me, it doesn't matter, right? And you know, the different ways that Shaitan attacks us, you know, through, you know, like through our shahwat and our shubahat, through our desires and through our doubts, and you know, how he whispers to us. And it's really just generally about how Shaitan influences us and how we can protect ourselves from him, you know.
You had a shahada.
It was a good talk, that. So there's a few old classic talks that were just, you know, given different titles, like sex, drugs, and music instead of sex, drugs, and rock and roll. Like sometimes people, you know, change they said, who talks about sex and drugs and rock and roll anymore? Like, what's rock and roll? Like, people didn't know what rock and roll was. But they forgot that it was like, the point was the sex, drugs, and rock and roll was like a catchphrase, wasn't it? It was
that's right.
Like, nothing has really replaced that, right? Isn't it? Sex and drugs. Yeah, it's that old song, wasn't it? Who was it? Was it Sid Vicious or sex and drugs and rock and roll?
I remember that from my school days. That's right.
Yeah, the punch.
So no, I think that's because I think when we gave lectures as well, you can gauge the environment, you can gauge the atmosphere, the ambiance, and and you could gauge when the audience was changing. If, say, for example, something was controversial, or we saw sometimes somebody might get upset with what we'd said, and you'd need to, how are we going to address that? Sometimes we'd be firm on the point that we're making, or we would become more emphatic, understanding that. So you cannot gauge that with social media.
That's a very good point, bro. Jazakallah khair for raising that. That's really interesting, because that is a really interesting point, because that was one of the skills back in the days that you had to learn. You had to learn that skill. And that's one of the reasons why I always thought that Speaker's Corner was a really good training ground for public speaking, because you are forced to, you know, gauge the impact that what you were saying on your audience. And if you lost their attention for a minute, you had to change your story, you had to change your tune, you had to bring in something different. And it was the same in those lectures, right? Like I used to say, you get this feeling, it was almost like a sixth sense, you know, like you feel like, I remember I entered this sort of zone where I wasn't looking at any particular person, but I was also almost looking at everybody at the same time. And like, it's exactly like you said, bro, you're almost like sensing, how is everyone feeling? If everyone's like going to sleep, it's like, okay, I gotta move this in some other direction. You know, I've got to bring the tone up. I've got like, and you're right now, we have no idea. We don't even know how many people are listening to us. Like, we just have to be hyper all the time. You know, that's the only way. And it is. Some of the stuff on social media is like hyper, non-stop hype, you know?
Right.
Because
but the good thing as well, so Abdurraheem, the epitome of that, in a sense, in that last lecture that you did, a shahada, someone was so impacted by what you said, and that was the seal and made them become Muslim.
The hopes of shaitan, is it?
Yeah, and then again, I've got a time here.
Where was that one?
That one was
Shabir Ali said.
Shabir Ali's Islamic.
Okay, this has got a really good story. I remember this shahada like it so.
Go for it. But as you're saying, people, this is the report, the activity report from Abdurraheem. You could see. So 400 people. The shahada at the bottom. Sorry, let me just make sure that's been highlighted. The shahada there at the bottom.
Yeah. So here's the thing, right? Okay, is that this guy who came up to me after the talk, and he said he wanted to take shahada, mashallah. So I asked him, well, what made you want to take shahada, right? He said, I was listening to one of your talks, right? And you were so serious, right? You were so serious that I knew that there was something about what you were saying. It was just not normal, right? And I said, okay, well, what talk was that, right? And he said, oh, that was your talk. It was called Sex, Drugs, and Rock and Roll. And it was like, I was thinking, that's not my serious talk. That's like one of my light-hearted, you know, talks where I tell jokes and stuff. And
right.
Like I sort of joke about it, is that, you know, sometimes you think that you're one type of personality, right? And like, you know, you think you're an easygoing sort of person, right? And like, but in the real world, right, in the minds of everyone else, people are flipping terrified of you, you know? And I realized that about myself, is that people seem to think I'm really, really scary, which I suppose if they think I'm scary and they find me scary, I suppose I'm scary, right? I don't think of myself as scary, you understand? Like, of course I'm serious, like, because you're talking about serious stuff. But I just think it's very funny between, you know, it made me think a lot about the difference between your perception of yourself and other people's possible perceptions of you, you know.
That's right.
So subhanAllah, I remember that shahada really well.
That individual was able to hear a lecture of yours.
Yeah.
This lecture here was about the it was the sex, drug, and rock and roll. You can remember that incident, and I think that relatability, that ability to be able to not put on social media, people see an image of this, okay, they see a portrayal, and you're showing what you can, but when you're there with that person, the people watching, listening to you, that's your character. If you're having a good day or you're having a bad day, like for example, you and I did a lecture again, Islam, liking to Islam in the West. It was both of us. It was in March, 18th and 19th of March, in Leeds University, Islamic Society of Leeds. See there, and what happened after that was quite unique. There are about 200 people there, 40, I think 40% non-Muslims in attendance I've got here. And two individuals came after this lecture Both of them listened to both of us. One came to you and took his shahada, and the other one came to me and took their shahada. I've still got his name, and if anyone knows of a Lee Macmillan who took his shahada on that occasion from Leeds, I'd love to know how he's doing. But so again, Abdurraheem, it was about that feel, that interpersonal engagement that was there. And also, there's a difference here now. People would sit silently in the audience, and they may come to us privately. That happens online. They may come and PM us, give us a private separately. But the impact of the person, your talk would be felt immediately, because that individual, that brother or that sister, maybe passed a question, or a brother who's arranged the event said, look, there's some brothers, there's some sisters that want to speak to you privately. They may come with personal problems. They may say how you've inspired them. They may come for advice. And I don't think that social media can capture.
There was a lot of those conversations that went on sometimes for hours, bro. I remember sometimes there would be Christians and we'd be having like debates, and like you'd have 40, 50 people standing there in the corridor listening to this discussion going on, right? So there's a lot of that type of stuff. And even then you go out for dinner afterwards with people, and sometimes non-Muslims would come along, discussions would continue, your interaction with the brothers, mostly with the brothers, the sisters not usually involved with that. But there was a lot of interaction. Like sometimes you stay the night, and then even more, right? There's more talking, more discussion. So that definitely is a huge benefit that you got from those type of, from traveling around. But something I wanted to mention, bro, right, is that one of the things, and I believe this was done on purpose, that the whole Dawah effort in the university has literally been killed, by Prevent. And this was done on purpose, bro. They did this on purpose. They shut down discussion.
I agree.
They shut down debate. They shut down talks. They intimidated, right?
Yes.
And this is just in a so-called democracy,
Right. Fascism.
Well, maybe not fascism, but it would, they clearly and are still taking a page out of the Stasi, East German secret police rule book. Even now, the way the world is going, everything's looking more and more like China than anything else, right? They mouth their homage to democracy. But back in the days, bro, we always used to say democracy is hypocrisy, and it was all a bunch of lies anyway. They all talk about human rights and democracy. It's just convenience. They didn't really believe in it, bro. They don't really. I mean, there are people. I've always said there are people who genuinely do believe in it, right?
Yes.
But most of them, they don't. It's just they'll throw it under the bus as soon as convenience that they have. Like this whole talk now about China, right? And the Uyghur Muslims. Like, how come all of these right-wing commentators, and like they're going on about China now, right? Suddenly. Well, I wonder why. Right. Are they preparing us for some Cold War or some actual real war with China, right?
It does raise.
Get us on board like they did with the Soviet Union, right?
Is
that the next thing? Oh, yeah, send the Muslims for a jihad in China, Like, bro, it's just like, look at Libya. True. Look what happened in Libya, bro. Look what happened in Libya, right? And you couldn't go to Syria and fight, but you could go to Libya and fight because why? The British government,
and they supported it, and they supported it.
And look what's happening in Libya, bro. Right now, you hear the reports of people, people coming from Africa being taken into slavery. Like the whole country is disintegrated into civil war, right?
Right.
This was a country that used to. I mean, okay, Gaddafi was a horrific. He was a horror story in himself. No doubt about it. Yeah.
But the infrastructure, the society and infrastructure.
Anyway, bro, look, the point being is that a lot of this stuff has been shut down in universities now anyway. So from a practical point of view, for many years, it's been really, really difficult to get anything done. And the quality of the brothers and sisters in the universities is not what it used to be. They're just not ready to stand up. And
Abdurraheem, I want the viewers, because what speaking to it so people know the impact of what you're saying. This folder, I'm holding this now, you can see it. All of these that you're seeing here are our lectures and invites to universities, our reports. Look at the size of this folder. That was over 1998, 99. So it speaks to what you're saying. Exactly that. there's no way we'd be doing this amount of lectures now across universities. They just wouldn't. Oxford University, Loughborough University, you know, we were all over the UK doing these particular lectures. Yeah. My thing would be this as well, Abdurraheem. I think not only the quality, and this is not to demean the brothers and sisters who are at universities now. I think their focus is different to where our focus was. Okay. For me, I believe also the messengers, those who are giving the dawah, are more focused on popularity and attendance and everything. And for us, Abdurraheem, and this is a reality, that wasn't what we looked at. When we would travel across the country, remember, I'd come and park outside your house, jump in the car with you, and we'd travel to world. We had no idea of the number or size of the audience that we were going to be visiting. We had no idea. And even when we went there, for example, I remember on one occasion, I traveled up to Middlesbrough. And it was apparently, I'm not sure. It was, yes. And I traveled up. I drove. One of my colleague brothers said he was going to drive back, which he didn't. I had to really drive back. But when I got there were a handful of individuals there, if that. And I wasn't upset at all because we were schooled on we're here to give the dawah.
Yeah, it's the intention, isn't it? It's your intention.
Right. There will be some prophets that come with 1 or 0 followers on the Day of Judgment, and this was ingrained in us. It was the intention. So the 1 or 2 individuals there, the organizer said, "You can cancel. Sorry about this." I said, "No." I spoke to 2. I said, "If you come for the talks," they said, "Yeah." So they pulled up the desk in the chairs. We sat there and I delivered the same lecture, and that interpersonal and intimacy that you had speaking to them. You could go into a different dimension that you would not ordinarily go into. So for me, I think that is something that has been lost completely by social media. I don't think it's been lost completely.
I mean, again, you know, like I think what's nice about social, I mean, to be honest, I mean, I do check my numbers just out of curiosity. Right.
Of course.
But the point is that I don't really care what the numbers are, right?
Right.
I mean, I care from the point of view of it's nice to have some idea of what impact you're having, right?
Yes.
But it's, I mean, I think the nice thing about this is that, look, you know, I can be sitting in the kitchen 1 minute making a cup of tea, and now I'm in my garage right now, right? And doing giving a talk that people can benefit from, inshallah.
Right.
And like, I don't have to drive 500 miles to Newcastle, right? Or whatever it is. It's a long drive. I think one of the things, I'll be honest, right? One of the things that used to upset me back in the days, right, was I never really cared what the numbers were if the people who had invited me had made a real effort to advertise and publicize it, right?
Yeah.
So I wasn't quite so easygoing with the brothers and sisters, right? And I still remember until this day going to Sunderland, right? And this wasn't every time, mashallah. A lot of this, as you remember, would depend on who was running the ISOC. You know, that would always change every so often, right? You know, one year you'd have a group of really active, mashallah, committed brothers and sisters. They would do amazing work, right? And then the next year, boom, they've gone, right? Yeah. And you know, and I remember going to Sunderland, which was a long drive from London, bro. It's a long way to go. Right? And I remember arriving there, and I would always look around to see, are there any posters? Because that was the way we had to advertise it in those days, right? It was just posters. I would look around and I would be looking, okay, here's a notice board, there's a notice, is there a poster there, right? And I remember going to this one, I didn't see one single poster anywhere, not one, not even one, right? And sure enough, when I went to the lecture theatre, there was like 6 people, right? And I traveled, 6-7 hours one way, right?
Right.
And so my thing was like, oh, did you do any advertising? Oh, well, yeah. And then when it was that, oh, well, this and that, because, you know, like I didn't see any posters anywhere, right? And that was a range of excuses. It's like, wait a minute. It's very easy for you to make a phone call. And by the way, in those days, they didn't even have to pay for the ticket, because usually the student union, if you showed it that you were inviting a speaker and you were an official society, they would pay for the speaker to come, right?
Yeah. And we didn't always, Abdurraheem, we hardly took money. We paid our own petrol expenses, traveled up ourselves.
That's another whole thing, bro. The hardship, the actual financial hardship, bro.
that we went through. Yes.
Because Al Ansar, bro, was a real savior, right?
Yeah.
From my own personal financial point of view, I was in really financially difficult times, bro. Like, you know, when people were negotiating and saying, I said, well, for example, the train ticket's going to cost 80 quid. And they would say, well, we can pay 50. And like, I don't have a regular job because,
they should pay the whole,
because I'm giving so many talks and lectures. So what you saw there, bro, that file you showed, that's what I was doing even when I didn't have a job.
I know. That's why I brought you in Al Ansar, because you need to be recompensed so that you didn't have to be thinking about family.
Ansar was a real savior for me, bro. Honestly, it was a real, from a sheer financial getting, you know, being able to live some semblance of a normal family life.
Yeah.
Mashallah, that was a real help. And then, you know, like I would go back and forth and fluctuate. And then I got another, I worked again in the London Central Mosque. I was there for about, you know, 5 years. That was, again, a real help, mashallah. It was a really, I really enjoyed that. That was,
and like, you were doing that, Abdurraheem, you were doing that, for example.
And that's one of the reasons I set up IERA, bro.
Yeah, brilliant. Brilliant. And for me, I remember I was working in the legal profession. So I had to take days off from my holidays to travel, and they knew I was Muslim, obviously, but that started causing problems, because if I had court cases, I had barristers that I had to instruct, and I was like, oh no, I'm just doing a lecture in Middlesbrough or Newcastle or Manchester. So I think it's important that we share this message for people to see that, yes, the hardship that was there, and we were very shy to ask. I don't remember you and me saying, oh, pay us this, and we're getting this.
No, we never asked.
We never.
It was just not in our, you know, not in our thing to start asking.
No.
Later on, I just changed. I said, no, you have to pay me. You know, like because I can't have to live. You know, if you want me to come and give a talk, you have to. And the other reason was, there's two reasons I started asking for payment at a certain stage. Number one was I just couldn't. You know, my family was getting bigger. I mean, like now I've got 13 kids, right? So but, you know, like, it was really tough financially. The other thing was, I realized that if I asked for payment, they would make a real effort to make sure that they got value for the money, right?
Very true.
And the other thing is, they could get money out of the student union. It's not like they had to even pay out their own, but they were just, sometimes the brothers and sisters were too lazy even to go through that process. So it's important to understand, like, I think this is one of the lessons that, you know, people, you know, like still have not picked up on, right? Is that a lot of the people who are full-time in Dawah are often not paid for it, you know, and that people should, you know, consider that they need to be paid just like everybody else needs to be paid, and they're not doing it for the money, because believe me, there's not money in it. There's not money in it in the sense that it's something you're going to make lots of money out of, right? You may think so, right? I suppose what you know do get out of it, which some people may find very attractive, and I honestly don't give a monkeys about anymore, is the traveling, right? So I did get to see some pretty amazing places. Like, I have traveled many places in the world and seen some beautiful places and met some beautiful brothers and sisters all over the world, and that was great. But the thing is, traveling takes its toll, bro. I want to go back to, you know, like one of the I would say, like, you know, in those days, you know, I would say his what he did was quite heroic in those days. Like, Allah knows, like, may Allah, you know, keep us on the straight path. But, you know, Abu Muntasir, the stuff that he used to do. Now, he again had a full-time 9-to-5 job, right?
He did,
I don't know how he managed. I mean, it took a toll on him because he had a triple heart bypass surgery, you know, like it took a real toll, right?
Yeah.
All of that traveling and traveling in airplanes, bro, that amount of time is which he didn't do so much, but I used to do a lot of international.
Remember, not only did he travel, remember he used to coordinate the Dawah. We'd meet him at in East London, and then I would be with a group of 40. So, right, you 5 brothers, Abdul Haqq 5, you're going up to Middlesbrough, and we'd travel overnight, be in Middlesbrough in the morning. Others would go. He coordinated all of the Dawah across the UK at that time as well. And you with South London, and you were responsible for South London and things like that. I remember calling you one morning, Abdul Haqq, the speaker hasn't turned up, you need to come to Balham Mosque. And I was
that going.
And I had to go to Balham Mosque.
That's right. Yeah.
But one of the things on the travel, I agree with you. Now, my
That's another benefit of the social media, big benefit. You don't need to do that traveling, man.
No, that's true. But no, you're right about the sites. I've been Kazakhstan, and I was the only black man in Kazakhstan. It rhymes as well, and it was minus 18 degrees, and
The
people
only black man in Kazakhstan. That's a book, bro.
That's right. On the plane, that was strange. I was looking around, and I was seeing all these Kazakhs, and I was looking. This is I don't usually look at are there any other people of color with me, but I was looking on the plane. Okay, there was no one. As the plane landed, everyone started clapping. I was like, okay, that's new. Then when we got into the airport, the driver met me and he said, zip your coat up. And I said, it's already zipped up. He goes, no, zip it and hold it. And I was like, okay. I walked out, minus 18 degrees, and I just stopped. And he said to me, don't keep walking. And I think to myself, I said to myself, this is not the land for black people. It just is. So I've been Kazakhstan, Maldives. Allah. So no, I think what you're saying, there are pros and cons, and I think we can't knock social media because of the sheer reach, and looking at what we're facing now with the pandemic and what we're doing, there's benefits there. But I want to move us to Abdurraheem, Leicester Square and Hyde Park now, because I believe you were the one. It's funny, someone contacted me a few days ago and they asked me this question, and I said, well, I was actually going to discuss this with Abdurraheem. They said, who were the one who started the Leicester Square Dawah? And I said, Abdurraheem was the one who said to me, because I remember we were doing Hyde Park, you and Abu Sufyan, mainstays there. I joined you, new kid on the block, was getting used to it and everything. It's really good. We were seeing the impact and everything. But I said to you, I remember speaking to you, and you were quite direct with me, because you're like, we've got to do the Dawah and everything, because I was like, I don't want to do Sundays. And I said, I prefer to be in the heart of where it's happening, where I used to rave and everything like that. So you said to me then go for it. Go Leicester Square. You said, what do you want to do? So I remember both of us going, and we took some brothers with us. And after that started jumping off, that's when you left it to me. And you carried on with Hyde Park. You still came to Leicester Square, but I started going to Leicester Square in Friday nights, and I love that Dawah. I'll tell you why. Because you'll see it, Muslims, non-Muslims, they're going into their entertainment, and you're speaking to them about Tawheed, and you're saying, okay, you're going in, you're coming out drunk. What are you going to do tomorrow? Is this the meaning of life and everything? So we were so successful that, remember, the Christians started turning up as well. And I had a strategy with the Christians. They'd come amongst us as we were talking to the audience, and instead of getting into a debate with them, I'd stand out and I'd say, look, Christians have come. Any of you who want to carry on listening to their message, you're welcome to stay with them. I'm going over there. Whoever wants to. So they would follow me. The Christians would come, and the crowd would turn on the Christian and say, go away, we don't want to hear from you. For me, that was where I felt comfortable, because it was happening. It was in not the belly of the beast. That's where it was all happening. I want to hear your perspective on that, because that was you who started that schema when you said, okay,
absolutely. Listen, I always say to people, Leicester Square, the Dawah, that was the best Dawah anywhere. It was way better than Speaker's Corner. Leicester Square was like the real soldier of Leicester Square, right? Was Abu Yassin, Sheikh Abu Yassin. May Allah rest his soul. May Allah have mercy on him. He's passed away now. Sheikh Abu Yassin. Yeah, I mean, but even before Abu Yassin, before him, I used to go down to Leicester Square very early on. Before I started speaking in Speaker's Corner, the first place I began speaking was in Leicester Square, right?
I see. Okay.
And there was a group of brothers. I don't remember many of them, right? There was one brother called Abdul Haqq, who's still around. I still see him. He looks exactly the same, subhanAllah.
Where's he from?
Brother. Huh?
Okay. I don't know him. I don't think I know him.
He always wears a beautiful imama and some like African clothes. He used to wear that back in those days as well. And there was some other brothers as well, and they were a real eclectic mix, because there was one brother who was like, literally, he was a black nationalist. He was just short of being Nation of Islam, right? But he wasn't, But he was very, very and there was Abdul Haqq, and there's Khwaja, a brother called Khwaja.
Khwaja, I remember Khwaja,
Khwaja, he was there. Most of them were black brothers. There weren't that many of whiteys around in those days, to be honest. And and the funny thing, and there was another brother who I don't remember, because he was Shia, actually. right? Because you have to remember, in those days, you know, the whole Shia Dawah was very strong, because it was the,
it was.
you know, the peak
It
of
was.
the Iranian Revolution. So a lot of people got caught up in that. But you know what? The funny thing is that none of us, like our differences were nothing when we were actually giving Dawah, right? Because one of the powerful things about it was that although we would argue outside that context, when it came to the fact that we were there in Leicester Square, we were all united, right? It was just, we just had one objective: to let people know about Allah and about Islam, right? And I took a big lesson from that day until today. I always believe that one of the ways that, or one of the only ways we are going to unite the ummah is when we once again have that outward looking mentality, right? When we realize that we have this duty to call mankind to Allah, right? We have this duty to call humanity to Allah. When we forget that, that's when we get lost in our squabbling and our arguing, right? And not that some of these things are definitely need to be discussed and argued about, but we have to put it in context. And living that Dawah in Leicester Square put it all in context. It was like, yes, we have differences, big differences, but compared to the fact that these people don't even know who is Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, they don't know the Quran, they don't know there is one Allah, right? Everything in context of that just faded away. So like those were the days like where we started. I remember we used to go around, walking around Leicester Square, we're going to talk about Islam, shouting like that. Over there, outside the Empire, whatever it was, the Empire, I think it was the Empire Cinema, we used to always gather there, right? That was the biggest space.
That's right. That's
in 5 minutes, we're going to, and the people would start coming, right? And then we'd stand up and we'd talk about Islam, or mostly I would bash Christianity at the time because that's all I knew, right? But you know, we'd all stand up and give a little speech, and we got way more shahadas there than we ever did in you know. But that sort of carried on, and then Abu Yassin came in, and mashallah, like every week there was 5, 10. Like shahadas. I would go away from my talks, I'd come back. Abu Yassin, I'd almost phone him straight away. He was one of the first people I talked to when I come back. He said, "Oh, Abdurraheem, mashallah, we had 15 shahadas since you were away." You know, so it was, bro, it was a great place to get down.
I need to rectify I need to rectify what I said, and I'm quite happy to then, because when you asked me to go up there, I think that was almost a revival then, because I went there thinking this was new. So I to clarify for the viewers that, mashallah, when I went up there,
I'm sure I wasn't the first. We weren't the first to do it either.
No, we weren't the first. So what you've just told me now, because Abu Yassin, may Allah have mercy on his soul, I remember, but when we were up there was no one else up there. I remember we were going up there and it's like, okay. So I thought, being new to that, it was fresh, but that's an excellent story. That what,
I want to say, Sheikh Abu Yassin, bro, I have to say in memory of him, I still was one of the greatest street du'at I've ever met in my life, right?
Undoubted.
This guy was, look, when he would talk about Islam, he would start crying. When he talked about Allah, tears would come to his eyes. You know, people, and I always used to use this as an example, right? I would say what comes from the heart goes to the heart. And he was someone who talked from the heart. And he, you know, his English wasn't the best, right? It was this Kurdish, Kurdish Iraqi, rough around the edges, but mashallah, when he talked, the sincerity, the love for Allah, the love for Islam, subhanallah, and people were just he was like
the godfather of street dawah.
Yeah, he was.
He was like the godfather of street dawah.
May Allah give him Jannah. May Allah fill his grave with light. May Allah give him shade on the day when there's no shade but his shade. MashaAllah.
Ameen. And if this show is in memory of Sheikh Abu Yassin. This is in memory of him.
Definitely. Rahimullah.
Abu Yassin, mashallah, tabarakallah.
He was one of those soldiers of Allah. People don't know about him, right? People won't be writing books about him. People, there won't be but there are these people, only Allah knows who they are, right? These simple people, subhanallah, Allah knows their value. Allah knows their status. Obviously we don't know, only Allah knows, but subhanallah.
But he was regular Hyde Park. He was regular at Hyde Park. He was regular. He was one of the founders there.
This brother Salwa or sister, I don't know, it's a brother Salwa. Yeah, saying, who is Abu Yassin? I never heard of him. Half Iraqi. Listen, Salwa, if you watch on YouTube some of the old videos of Speaker's Corner, right? With myself and Abdurraheem McDowell, if you can find them online, yeah, some of the old one. If you see an old man with a white beard and a hat, yeah, old man, you may see him standing in the background. That is Abu Yassin. He wasn't, you know, he's not a sheikh like he gave fatwas and this and that. He was a sheikh in the sense that he was an old man, but he was like the father. He was like the emir of the Dawah. He was organizing, he was phoning the brothers, come down to Leicester Square. He would bring the table in his car, right? He would bring the banners. He would, you know, he was the guy just making sure that it was always happening. You probably never heard of him, but inshallah on the day of judgment, you'll see who he is. Inshallah, you'll see.
And we are part of his fruits in that he was such a galvanizer to give that street Dawah and Hyde Park. And Abdurraheem, that brings me, as you said, I remember Leicester Square.
And another guy who's still alive now, mashallah, Umar Abdullah, mashallah. You have to mention brother Umar Abdullah, right, from IPO.
That's right.
He was like maybe the founder of the nationwide street Dawah movement, right? Amazing work that he did. Amazing work that he did. And he's still plugging away, bro.
Remember, you may not remember Aberdeen. MashaAllah. Aberdeen Grillo, who took Shahada at your home, MashaAllah. It was him and Aberdeen. He's in Birmingham now. They both started IPO and on Edgware Road and Cricklewood and everything like that. Absolutely right. But also, Abdurraheem, one of the beautiful things about Leicester Square, and after moving to Hyde Park, specifically you giving Dawah and what some used to describe you as in a complimentary way, mashallah. But what in Leicester Square, what was beautiful is you saw some of the non-practicing Muslims, and I remember a particular sister. I didn't know she was a sister at the time, but she'd always quietly come and then stand beside us instead of going to the nightclub. She used to sell roses. I don't know, you remember some used to go and sell roses. She'd be selling roses to people going in and out of the club. Then slowly but surely, I started seeing her wear hijab. And she was standing, I was like, okay. Then I saw her at Brixton. She'd start coming into sister's area. And this happened with some brothers as well. And I want to give a shout out to brother Abdullah French. He used to go night clubbing. Then he started listening to us at the circle outside. He took Shahada, and he's one of the mainstays at Brixton Mosque now, mashallah, tabarakallah. So that for me, you cannot, social media or anything cannot replace that at all. But I want to move to Leicester Square, to Hyde Park now. And I remember you were giving your talk one day. And I remember this is a compliment to you, mashallah, tabarakallah. And I remember some individuals standing there, it's like, if he's like Isa, Prophet Jesus. Non-Muslim, because you had your long flowing hair and everything. You're really quite open. And I found that so funny to hear that in a respectful way. I think, okay, they're non-Muslims, whatever. And obviously they've got, and we know Jesus wasn't white and blonde haired, blue-eyed Abdurraheem. I have to hasten to add on that one there. But the point of the matter was that when I heard them in the crowd, I was standing there ready to go on and do my session. But I remember like, he looks like Jesus. And I was like, how do they know what Jesus was like? But they were standing in the hall listening to
you know what I mean? You know, he looks like what we think Jesus looked like because we've been
I think
pictures plastered everywhere.
It was complimentary in that sense that I was thinking, okay, this is saying white flowing robe.
I tell you some incidents, bro. I remember once I was on the tube and like literally this is just me standing there, right? I wasn't, you know, like, and in those days I would always wear like a thobe, not necessarily a white thobe, but you know, like a thobe. And I had this like woolen, like over, like it was I don't know what it was. It was like a woolen thing with a hood, and I'd even walk around.
I remember that.
And the imama, right? And this person came up to me and said, you know, are you the Lord? And literally said, are you the Lord? And I said, no, but you know, I believe what he believed, and my message is the same message. He said, what's that? And then I told Dr. tell him about Islam. But I think the best, bro, the best was when I was in Georgetown. You know Georgetown? That's, I think your mum's from Guyana, right? So that's
Guyana, from Guyana,
yeah. So I was in Georgetown. So you probably know a bit of pidgin, whatever. I don't think they have a special, like a really strong way of talking, right? So the brothers, they're saying, you know what we're going to do today, Abdurraheem? We're going to go wakatan. And I said, what is wakatan? Yeah. And they said, oh, wakatan, man, it means walk about town. So walk about town becomes wakatan. Yeah, we're going wakatan. And so we went wakatan. Yeah. So we're walking in the market, right? And there I am in my white thobe, right, and everything. And right across the market, this woman shouting, "It's the Lord! It's the Lord over there!"
The only white guy in there at that point.
It's the Lord! Oh man. Yeah, I got a bit of that, man. Quite a bit of that in the days.
I mean, mashallah. Hyde Park was like Leicester Square. You were in the heart of the situation, you were really engaging with people who were unsuspecting of your message. They were out to rave. Hyde Park people came to listen. Now, so I'm asking you now, what was that difference? As you know, people in Leicester Square would be caught unawares because they're distracted initially by their pursuit of nightclubbing and alcohol drinking and whatever. But Hyde Park people came to listen.
Yeah.
How would you compare between the two venues?
I don't know. I mean, look, you know, there was a sheikh. Do you remember there was an elderly sheikh from Yemen who was actually one of the students of Sheikh Muqbil? Was his name Huwajiri or
Abdul Hamid?
Maybe it was Abdul Hamid. Yeah, an elderly sheikh. He used to come and visit us. Yeah, elderly sheikh. Yeah, maybe in his late 50s, early 60s or something. 60s. Right. Anyway. And people used to tell him that. He said, yes, some brothers said the same. They used to go into New York, you know, into the central square, and they would say it was the best place to give dawah. And he made this observation. He said, of course they do. Because what are they doing all those things for? Why do they go to those places? Because they're looking, that their life is empty and they're looking for answers, right? And where do they go? They think the answer is in clubbing, you know, and partying and movies. Yeah. So when you go there and you really give them the answer, they're looking, what they're looking for is Islam. They just don't know it. Right.
I don't know it.
What they're really looking for, because what they want to fill their hearts. They want to fill their hearts. Right. What gives happiness to the heart and peace is the remembrance of Allah, right?
That's right.
But if your heart is not filled with Allah's remembrance, you're going to fill it with something else. It has to be filled. The heart can't be empty. So you'll fill it with anything that's going to give you some semblance of what you think is happiness, right? What they're really looking for, you know. And I think the problem with Speaker's Corner, yes, a lot of people did go down there looking for answers. But most people who went there were just tourists, right? They were just passing through. They were just tourists. I always found Leicester Square Dawah was more effective, to be honest.
Yes.
And one of the reasons I kept going to Speaker's Corner was more because of the filming and the impact, which is interesting, right?
Yeah.
Is that the videos had a massive impact, probably way, way more the impact of the videos than the actual speeches live there in Speaker's Corner.
That's Dawah in the Park. Dawah in the Park.
Dawah in the Park videos,
Brilliant videos.
Which I think are online that people have uploaded. It wasn't me, but they've been uploaded. You can find them online.
That's right.
So,
that's right.
Yeah.
No, mashallah. I think that here, Abdurraheem, as we're speaking, we've already spoken and highlighted, I think, the effectiveness of that dawah on the ground. And I think that the social media aspect is good, but we need to really make sure that we don't lose that one-to-one and that group engagement on attending events. I don't know if study circles still take place in the UK. They probably don't, which is unfortunate. Yeah. You'll remember that when we used to attend your study circles, we were excited. We rammed it to the rafters. You had to open, I think, virtually every room for the sisters upstairs.
Yeah, people were in the garden, bro. People were in the garden listening to.
Hundreds were there, and we'd be sitting there,
crazy.
Peers like yourself, Abu Munzir there, Abu Alia, Abu Sufyan would be once in a while, and we were just talking about the basics of Tawheed and the Sunnah in that particular. That was our social event, and it was a very exciting one. And those sisters who came from North London, some of us would drop them home in their cars that instead of them having to go on underground. We were very happy, like our brothers are looking after our children, our daughters, and everything. And it's a pity that that's been removed, I think, in a sense, and replaced totally with social media. Not social media, but it's taken away that connectability. I think that connectivity one-to-one, that being close in that instance. It's good because there's a much wider reach. For sure, there's a much wider reach. But then what is the effectiveness or the essence or the longevity of the connection once it's been made?
Yeah, look, at the end of the day, I'm a firm believer in people meeting people and talking to each other. And the reality is, like IERA, for example, most of our work is still street dawah. We're still going out and talking to people. And like the most impactful work that we're doing, like, is in Africa and the Philippines, right, where we go out to these remote places, and that's it. They don't have social media, bro. The only way to talk to people is by talking to them face to face and meeting with them.
Yeah.
And it's still, at the end of the day, it still has, you know, the impact. You know, I don't think, you know, social media is never gonna replace, you know, like these dystopian sci-fi movies and like whatever, right, where everything happens. Like, so, I don't know, I don't know if they do, but I'm sure there's some movies like that where everyone interacts remotely, you know, like in some way. But I don't think that's ever going to happen completely, bro. People are always going to want to, you know, it's interesting. For example, in this whole lockdown, I was just watching a Vice like mini documentary, right, on these guys organizing raves. You know, like people, they have to. People have to mix, bro. People have to.
Yeah.
You know, and that's one of the things I think more than anything is that people are really going to realize how much they miss interacting with other human beings, you know?
Yes.
And I remember when I went to see my family, my other family, not the one I'm with, stuck in, you know, I don't say stuck. I'm so happy to be with my wife and kids in the house. It doesn't, I love it. It doesn't bother me at all. But, you know, it's nice to see my other kids and my grandchildren. I saw them only once since lockdown. So nice to see them, you know, like you really, really see how much you miss that interaction with people, you know.
Yes.
And when I went to the office, it was like, oh my God, people to actually meet and talk, and you know, like Allah's designed us like that, bro.
That's
Allah hasn't designed us to, you know, like lock ourselves away and not interact with people. And you know, you think about the hadith where the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, it's better to live with the people and suffer the pain of their, you know, the pain of what they give you, than remove yourself from them, right?
That's right.
So people can hurt you, and there are detrimental effects of being with people, but the Prophet encouraged us to be patient with that and mix with the people and be with the people. That's better, he said. You know,
and I think that, and hopefully, I'm hoping globally that lessons are being learned, and I think they are by the world, that we need to engage, and we need to engage on platforms and environments that are mutually beneficial, not just taking from others in that instance. And I think as we're going to conclusion, you've said something important, and Jazakallah khair about IERA, and this is the difference as well. And you're carrying that baton into the decade, mashallah, which is the dawah was to reach everyone, not to be insular and preaching to ourselves. It was an outward call. We went out to engage with others. We engaged with non-Muslims. We engaged with those who were not of the same religious persuasion as us. And we showed them, and I think we showed them a concern, a care, a genuine interest in their well-being. It wasn't about it wasn't about our own egos. It wasn't about being fearful that others are going to come and usurp us. We had that genuine care for others coming into Islam, and those who didn't come into Islam, having dialogue with them on why we were what we were upon. And I think it's a good note to complete on, to talk about IERA, because you're one of the few organizations that are still doing that from the 90s. And part of the problem many of us have had today is that preaching the insularity among ourselves and disdain for everybody else. And this was not the message. It never has been the message. And we need to change that back around. So I'll hand it over to you, Abdurraheem, just to talk a bit about that, because you've maintained that thread.
I think one of the, if I can say this, you know, one of the silver linings of the horrors of 9/11 and 7/7 and all the other incidents, many other incidents, you know, that have happened since, but obviously those are the two relatively big ones, was that a lot of the mosques, the masajid, and a lot of the communities, the Muslim communities in UK, realized that they couldn't separate and isolate themselves from their communities anymore. They needed to reach out and let them know that, look, we're not these evil people, right? And so for the first time, they started opening their doors, right? Having these open mosque days, reaching out to their neighbors, right? And you know, alhamdulillah, we had a campaign in the early days of our era, which we should probably do again because it was brilliant, called Meet Your Muslim Neighbor, where we actually got people to give out a little booklet, and people would put their number on it, and you know, and give them gifts as well, like a gift box, right, which had some information, but they'd also put some laddu or some bakhlawa or something like that, you know, like something nice, right, just to say, look, we're here, we're Muslims, we're your neighbors, there's nothing to be afraid of, right? So that sort of thing has picked up a little bit, you know.
Good.
And this is a whole big story, bro. It's a very, you know, I think it's something important to discuss. It would be a really interesting topic of discussion, right? Because one of the things that we had to deal with back in the days, bro, and one of the things that a lot of commentators were writing about the Salafi Dawah in the 90s, right? And I mean, sometimes people outside the Salafi Dawah, right? Is why was the Salafi Dawah so attractive? Why did it have such a big impact? And one of the reasons was because we tried so hard to separate and segregate culture from Islam, right?
That's right.
And
Absolutely.
so that how did that insular thinking take place? That almost ghetto mentality, right?
Right.
Why did Muslims in UK? That would be a very, very interesting topic for conversation. Because alhamdulillah, it's being moved away from, but it's still there, right?
Yes, it is.
And it has many dimensions, and it's especially in the UK, maybe not so much in America, but definitely in the UK, it was there and still is there to some extent. So it's a big discussion, bro, for another time.
What we can do, and what we'll do then, Abdurraheem, as we said we were going to do, let's look at taking up this topic by inviting a guest maybe on the next occasion, and from the South Asian community, who can tell us about how they stopped being insular and engaging because of the Salafi Dawah, and what preceded that when they were being culturally engaged, and then looking outwardly, seeing white faces like yours, black faces like mine, coming into their space under this ideology of Salafiyah. I think that would be fantastic.
You think of someone, I'll think of someone. Let's see what we can do, inshallah.
We can do for next week, inshallah.
Brilliant, bro.
I would say, Jazakallah khair, Abdurraheem, again, as always, enlightening.
It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure. I look forward to these evenings, even though I did forget that this evening, but just because my week's been so busy, I can't believe how quickly, subhanallah, this time came. It was like, subhanallah. Anyway,
mashallah. Mashallah. So what we say, Abdurraheem, I'll say to our audience, Assalamu alaikum. That's Abdurraheem Green.
And wa alaikum assalam, assalamu alaikum, everyone. And that's Abdul Haqq Baker. And until next week.
See you next week, inshallah.
See you next week, inshallah.
Assalamu alaikum. Wa islam to the